Most would probably agree that the most prestigious fights in mixed martial arts are those that involve the sport's champions. There's a belt on the line, the extra 2 rounds of action to help in distinguishing one of the fighters as superior. In the vast majority of cases, championship matchups are the most high-level and high-stakes combat sports events possible. And yet, when it comes to UFC 273, I don't think that it's a stretch to say that each of the 2 title fights featured on the card are being totally overshadowed by one of their 3-round counterparts. And believe me when I say that while sure this does happen from time to time, the sheer gulf in interest from the general public between the bantamweight and featherweight title matchups and the return of Khamzat Chimaev tells a very interesting story, because the levels of interest that surround this fight don't come purely because of a magnetic personality or even an exciting fighting style. Indeed, those factors are certainly in play, but this time around, more so than anything else, the UFC have played this one wonderfully, taking the thing that makes Khamzat stand out and building a step up in competition around it. We've seen fighters in the past and quite recently making their promotional debuts by jumping directly into high-level matchups. Guys like Anderson Silva and Jiri Prochazka, who skipped over low-level contender fights to immediately step into a division's upper tiers. Just like we've seen situations where a fighter on short notice has been plucked due to a willingness to take an almighty risk, getting a massive step up in competition in return. Lando Venata being my favorite example, as he made his UFC debut against Tony Ferguson, who was the number 3 ranked lightweight in the world if memory serves. But Chimaev's situation is a little different. Even before he bulldozed his way through a very reputable opponent in Li Jingliang to establish himself in the welterweight top 15, the UFC were trying to make a matchup between him as an unranked fighter and the number 3 ranked Leon Edwards. And at this point in time, Khamzat was 1-0 in the 170-pound division, with his other 2 fights happening in middleweight. But even still, they tried to make the Edwards fight. And in doing so, they were of course fully aware of just how much of a risk they were taking with one of their most explosive potential stars. But what I love about that, and what I love about seeing him at 11 fighting Gilbert Burns, who is number 2, is that the UFC are fully willing to play a freakish game that completely and utterly encompasses the type of fighter Khamzat wants to be, and in many ways already is. Upon landing in the UFC, he quickly broke the promotional record for the quickest turnaround victory by winning his next matchup just 10 days later. And that was certainly the early seed that later started to blossom in the minds of the MMA fanbase. And then after being set up for his 3rd fight against Gerald Meerschaert, our expectations were once again completely subverted as Chimaev managed to score a thunderous knockout after just 17 seconds. And based on Meerschaert's surging form of late, that's a win that's aging quite well. All of a sudden, the devastating grappler with vicious ground and pound had proven himself to possess knockout power. And boy did we start getting very interested. Like any great story, there was a period of real despair and doubt after a particularly rough battle with COVID-19 threatened to bring Khamzat's career to an end, with Boers himself personally telling us that he was ready to quit. Of course, thankfully it didn't happen, but in his time away, a grand total of 13 months to be exact, he somehow managed to reach a new level of stardom altogether. During this time, they tried and failed to put together a contest against Leon Edwards, which was a ridiculously huge step up in competition for a fighter who had only spent around 9.5 minutes inside the Octagon. But somehow it made sense. Somehow it kind of fit into the narrative. And though it did eventually fall apart, the litmus test that the UFC had done showed that people genuinely believed in this man. And in sensing this, when Chimaev was finally fit to fight, the UFC wisely decided to give him an Octagon return in Abu Dhabi, where he received a hero's welcome. By far and away the loudest pop of the night. And of course, when the time came to fight, it was more of the same, but with an added layer of theatrics that was just absolutely perfect. We got to watch as Chimaev actually lifted a top 15 welterweight into the air and carried him across the cage while screaming at Dana White like a madman. It was pure theater, and given the growing reputation of the man in question, it's exactly what we were expecting. 4 fights in, and Khamzat had managed to post one of the most insane stat sheets you're ever likely to see, dishing out 192 strikes while absorbing only 2 in return. And instead of opting to slow Khamzat's roll at this point in time, the UFC have given him the opportunity to follow through, and I must say I actually love the decision. On a quick side note, if you're enjoying this content and would like to stay up to date with all of our weekly uploads, be sure to subscribe to the channel now, so you can continue to keep an eye on the progression of MMA Dive, the only channel in MMA with 192 videos uploaded, with only 2 videos absorbed. How's that for a stat line? Also, we recently set up a Patreon account, so if you want to help support the channel, the link is in the description. So yeah, the title of this video, calling this guy a freakish talent in a freakish scenario, it shows a great awareness of tone by the UFC, and I think it's pretty fitting and almost important to consider when taking in his story as a whole. Whatever about the jump in ranking between the number 11 and the number 2, again, let's not forget just how close we were to getting an unranked 1-0 welterweight fighter whose other 2 wins were both at 185 pounds. That guy was all but set to be in a title eliminator against the number 3 ranked Leon Edwards. It's totally freakish, but I actually think that every now and then, a fighter comes along who deserves the opportunity to dare to be great. The UFC hold the power to make that happen, of course, and in giving him a fight like Gilbert Burns, they are really not making it easy for him. It's like, yeah, you still want a top 5 guy? Well, we're going to give you a powerful technical striker who, while sure, you might be able to take him down, but he just so happens to have the best jiu-jitsu in the top 15. That is truly ballsy matchmaking right there, because yeah, while I do think that Burns has a very good chance of winning this fight, and I really do believe that, but if Khamzat shows himself to be as great as we think he can be, the upside here for him, for his fans, and most importantly for Dana White as a promoter, the man who orchestrated the whole thing, it makes a lot of sense why they're going down this route. They've basically taken the one factor above all others that makes Khamzat so damn attractive to us as a rising prospect, and built this fight in particular with that in mind. And I applaud them for that, because sometimes you just gotta roll the dice. But as far as Khamzat Chimaev specifically is concerned, I truly do believe that the upside here is monstrous. But how do you see Burns versus Chimaev playing out? I want round and method predictions, folks. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and a comment before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thank you for watching.